Stand by, sir. We'll be live now.
Very good. Thank you.
With us from Delaware, Rob Arlett, Delaware State Chairman of Trump 2020 campaign, and from Cairo, Emil Amin, writer and political researcher. Welcome about Mr. Arlett. Let me start with you. Is it the suitable time to send these accusations and said the U.S. will stop the funding on WHO, knowing that it is responsible, number one, on this crisis?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to share with you and your audience. I believe that the president is focused on ensuring that the WHO is conducting themselves with full transparency. And I think the president has every right to ask questions with regard to what they've done, why they've done it, and also how they came to the conclusions. I think it is a known fact now that the WHO originally had stated that this virus could not be transmitted from person to person. That was faulty information. I think we have to look at all things regarding to the WHO, their activities, and their conclusions and their motives. I think they have every right, and the president, I applaud his effort to further investigate what they've been doing and why.
You said that the WHO gave wrong information about the pandemic. Trump himself,
Yes.
1 month ago, he said that there are a few cases and he will disappear. So himself, he said that, wrong information. What do you say?
Well, I think, again, the president had made decisions based on the information provided to him, I should say, from the medical experts, to include the WHO. And I think President Trump has, from the very beginning, taken this very serious, as evidenced why he shut down travel from China to the United States, despite the WHO and others suggesting him not to doing so. But President Trump took a lead on that decision to safeguard the American people. And again, I applaud President Trump in his continued effort to focus on the American people and safeguarding the American people, despite the WHO leaning towards and being Chinese-centric. I think, again, they have a historical context of leaning towards Chinese and what they've been doing, and also the information coming from China. And I think the world was waiting on China to be very fluid, be very transparent, and being very truthful to the world on what happened and how this got created. And we all now know now that China was not very honest and was not very transparent whatsoever. And I would have called, and the president has called on the WHO to be more firm with China, yet they have not done so to date.
Mr. Emil, what do you think about what our guest from US said? Let us share with you what Trump exactly said about WHO. He sent a tweet yesterday saying that WHO blew it, knowing that it is largely funded by US, but it is very China-centric. We'll look into that. We look into the funding that we give to WHO. Mr. Emil, is it the suitable time to talk about stopping the funding? Because the entire world is facing an unprecedented crisis. Is it the time for such accusations, Mr. Emil? Good evening, Muhannad, and good evening to your guest. I thank you for discussing this topic. Of course, there are many controversies about this. The Trump administration proved that Trump is isolationist. The second thing, your guest from US, did he base his judgment on numbers and statistics? I don't think so. I think that it is not the time for the withdrawal. Donald Trump, since he entered the White House, he withdrew from several international organizations, and he was pushed by the fact that US is not the police officer of the world, and he withdrew from the climate agreement of Paris and from the human rights organization, and also the ballistic missile agreement with the Russians. In addition to other agreements, he withdrew from them. So before Trump sent his accusations to WHO, but we can admit that WHO made some mistakes, but the fact that Peter Navarro, who was the advisor of the White House in the end of January, sent a memo about the necessity to close airports with China, and at the end of February, Trump was told that the virus will contract 100 million Americans and a lot of people will die. So that was included in that memo of Peter Navarro. Second thing, you are not talking about some fragile country. You are talking about the American empire, between quotes, as Paul Kennedy says, which means that there is an army of intelligence officers and systems. How come the intelligence of the United States couldn't know in advance this information about the early spread of the virus in China? Because if we go back, Trump in the beginning didn't take seriously that virus, and now he is changing that attitude and is laying the blame on WHO. And of course, Ethiopia and China might have some collaboration, but not the fact that it is circulated. Mr. Arlett, this politicizing of COVID-19, Tedros Adhanom, the president of WHO, said no need to use COVID-19 to gain political point. Please isolate and confine this politicizing of this virus. US and China should unify to face this dangerous enemy. Don't you think that this is the logic, that these countries unite, especially the superpowers, the big economies, to face this epidemic in order to exchange blames and gain political points? US is accusing China, China is accusing it. Don't you think that it is time for unity?
I agree with the fact that we have to have unity, but unity must be based on facts and not fiction. It must be based on transparency and not hiding of the truth. And I think that's where we all can agree upon. Let's get to the truth of the matter. That's exactly what President Trump is insisting. That's exactly what he has called on, which is, I think we all can agree from the world that we all need to focus on the facts. The question is why did the WHO originally come out stating that this virus could not be transmitted from person to person? That is a huge mistake. I think also we all know that China has not been very transparent originally and even continue with regard to the pandemic within their own country, how it got started, the real numbers with regard to those who've been infected by it, and also those that have been killed by it. So I think we all can agree that let's get to the truth of the matter. Let's not make this a political effort, but let's make this based on a factual effort. That's exactly what President Trump is calling on, and therefore that's exactly why he's looking into all things to include financial support for the WHO to ensure that they are absolutely transparent on the truth and they don't get it wrong, because this is lives, not just American lives, but it is worldwide lives that are at risk. And I think I again applaud President Trump and all world leaders to focus on the truth of the matter and hold those accountable that have been if you would, granted with regard to human, human lives. And again, WHO has been that entity from the world's view with regard to that. So we should all investigate WHO. We should all investigate the truth and how we got to where we are today, and most importantly, of how we can get through this pandemic as a nation and as a world, so we can get back to focusing on what we all do best, and that's providing and caring for our loved ones and our families. I think you would agree with that.
Mr. Emil, can we hold accountable a party or the other? Don't we see that everyone made a mistake, because this is an unprecedented pandemic? Isn't it unfair to hold accountable China or WHO, because everyone was taken by surprise and was not ready to deal with such a pandemic? Mr. Emil, what do you say? I totally agree with you, Mr. Muhannad, but the fact that the humankind was taken by surprise, I disagree with that statement, because everyone knew that the biological war is always probable and likely to happen. Now it's too late. The pandemic is ravaging the globe, and I think that now we'll be witnessing another era now. In the future, I think that we'll be categorizing the world before Corona and after Corona, like before Christ and after Christ. I think that Henry Kissinger talked about the viruses wars, and if we can talk about the economy of the world, it will be really affected in the future. Until now, we haven't witnessed the real bad repercussions of the COVID-19. We see that in the medium term it will be manifested very, very severely. And also the new liberalism will change now. A lot of things are changing. Bretton Woods, that financial system will be reviewed. The structures of the political blocs like NAFTA, like the European Union. I think that we are seeing an earthquake that is stronger than the earthquake of the United States. We wish all the best and the good health for the Americans. We disagree with the politics of US, but we pray for the lives of the Americans. What is happening is worse than the attack of Pearl Harbor and 9/11. Mr. Arlet, Emmanuel Macron, the French president, said that he supports WHO and its president, and he says he refuses to see this organization in clash with US and China. This is what President Emmanuel said. What do you say?
If that question is towards me, again, I think that President Trump and the American people for years have supported the WHO, not only on their policies and their conviction of ensuring that the world, if you would, maintains a healthy nature, but we've also put our money where our mouth is with regard to the taxpayers and the American people. So when one says that they don't agree with our politics, I think that one likes our financial support of the WHO, and I think our politics is focused on transparency, and I think we have to ensure that there is full transparency in the process, that people are doing the right thing for the right reasons for the benefit of all around the world, and not their own political efforts within their own countries. And again, I think that we have to continue to focus on solutions and call out those who continue to have issues and are not fully transparent in their efforts to be honest to the world, not just Americans, but really to the world. So again, I think we all can agree on investigating the WHO, their decision making, and how, again, did they come to a conclusion that this pandemic was not transferable from person to person. We all looked to them for the answers originally and early on before this virus came into the United States. And also, I would also question, why did China prevent the top medical individuals, not only in the U.S., but also from around the world, from going into China early on to determine and investigate this virus? Why were they turning away the top health officials from around the world? I would ask that very question to our other guest here, and why would he think that China would want to do that?
Yes, maybe I will let the chance for Mr. Emil. So, Mr. Arlett, you ask all these questions to WHO. On the other hand, I'd like to ask Donald Trump because he said in the beginning it's just a flu. He used that frequently.
Sure.
And he said there are 5 deaths and it will vanish. So the people have the right to ask what is the logic that pushed Trump to say that, Mr. Arlett?
Well, just like all others, and that is the information that he was being provided by the medical individuals that are around him and also from around the world. President Trump listens and surrounds himself with professionals, and I think we have to understand that. He himself does not make these determinations. He himself makes this determination by those from around him, to include the WHO. So let's be very clear on how President Trump makes his own decisions. That is, he surrounds himself by experts. He deciphers the information that they are providing for him, and then he'll make a decision. Again, I'll get back to the original context and the original messaging that was coming out from the WHO, that this pandemic was not transferable from person to person. That is a fact, that is on record, and I would hold them accountable for that very, very big mistake, because in the end, that cost lives, not only in the U.S., but also from around the world, because they got it wrong. And the question is, why did they get it wrong?
Mr. Emil, maybe you can answer some of the questions asked by Mr. Rob Arlett. But I'd like to add, Mr. Emil, so aren't we right to hold this organization accountable because it acted late in announcing this epidemic as a pandemic? A lot are seeing that, and a lot are seeing that it acted really late, and it could have done a lot of things to spare lives, Mr. Emil. Yes, Muhannad, there is something about the transparency, I agree, between China and WHO. And let me be more accurate, not the WHO, but the president of the WHO. I mean here the Director General, Tedros Adhanom. I think that something is between him and China, and China supported the candidacy of Tedros Adhanom, that Ethiopian ex-minister, to preside and head this organization. And also we heard that the only planes that were allowed to land in China were Ethiopian planes. And also we know that China is heavily investing in Ethiopia. So yes, there are some controversy about that between the relation between Tedros Adhanom, the Director General of WHO, and China. The other thing I would like to say is that Trump, when he wakes up in each morning, he receives the briefing about what happens in the world from different systems. He receives a briefing from the State Department, from the Pentagon, from the intelligence services, and you know that there is always this battle between different systems. And regarding this giant fleets, of the US, NSA, and all these intelligence services that are knowing everything. So here we are surprised to know that how come this intelligence giant system could not know and recognize at the time that this information issued by WHO were misleading or not accurate. If we say you were not aware, so we raise the question about their efficiency and their professionalism. And we know that Trump is an unexpected president. He says a lot of things and changes them the following day. And we know also that there is a problem now in the leadership of the United States. There is this contradictory between the system of ruling in US. This is some kind of complicated problem in the US. We hope that we overcome this. Mr. Emil, maybe this applies to the normal cases. Now we are living an unexceptional circumstance, Mr. Arlett. Don't you think that in this exceptional circumstance we should put aside politics? Why we do not see this unity between China and US? Now China is giving aid to European countries and now it tries to gain some points against US. Now it is not only from US but only from China and other powers trying to politicize that. Until when we will continue to use that?
Well, I think President Trump, again, is focused on saving American lives and really, for that matter, lives from around this world. And let us not forget that. There is no confusion in America with regard to politics or even policy. President Trump is focused on every single day on safeguarding American lives. This is a fact because he comes forward each and every single day and conducts a press conference every single day with experts from around the U.S. surrounding him and providing non-stop question and answer session between the press from not only the press from here in America, but also press from around the world. So let's be very clear. President Trump is focused on saving lives, and I think that he has not been political in any way, in my opinion, but he's focusing on really the principles and getting to the truth. That's what he seeks, and we should be questioning those that have come out and got it really wrong. And I appreciate our other guest here for agreeing that that the WHO and the leadership have been Chinese-centric. There are some questions that should be answered. We to this day do not have any answers to these very questions. And I'll get back to the basis of how we got here today, and that is China was not transparent in this pandemic. They did not come forward with regard to the realities of the severity of this disease, and why also did they shut out health experts from around the world early on, so more people could have gotten more information and we could have saved many lives. These are two questions that have yet to get answered that we must get answered very soon and very quickly, because in the end, WHO has lost credibility and they will continue to lose credibility from leaders from around the world, and along with that credibility is going to be financial support. We as Americans hold the dollars that are tied to WHO and other organizations, and they have to be held accountable and transparent with regard to those dollars being allocated to various organizations. So yes, we all need to come together as human beings, if you would, from around this very world, focus on realities, focus on truths, and let's save lives, because all of our families and our communities are counting on that.
Mr. Emil, let me deviate a bit from this politicizing of the virus by WHO and powers. Another question, don't you think that now, after this crisis, globalization is at stake, because now the European Union is threatened, and a lot of blogs are suffering now. Every and each country is focusing on its own people and its own population. Don't you think that globalization concept is now at stake, Mr. Emil? Yes, Muhammad, you talk diplomatically. I think that if we want to say it bluntly, yes, this crisis triggered a lot of chauvinism and fundamentalism and populism and a lot of faults, and all these things emerged after the start of this crisis. What happened in Italy made us clearly seeing the collapse of some blocks that were said leading a lot of populations, and some blocks that are always there. And Russia and China opened doors to Italy, and Germany and France closed the door to Italy. So that was something unprecedented. And another thing is we will see the birth of the Orwellian nation or community, because a lot of countries used this virus to play the big brother role and to use more dictatorship and control their populations. So this opens the door to a lot of violations of human rights. I think that we need more humanized world. Mr. Arlett, let me ask you in the remaining time about the performance of Donald Trump in this crisis. We follow these press conferences and the media briefing. Donald Trump is facing a lot of questions that he doesn't like, and he is very aggressive against the journalists in these press conferences. How can we evaluate this performance? Is it the expected performance of the leader of a superpower?
I believe I too, as you, have been watching the president each and every day at his press conferences. I personally think he's been very presidential, and I say that because he has been focusing on the issues and the policies that are saving lives and how to prevent lives. And again, with regard to some of the questioning from some of the reporters, yes, they themselves want to get political in their questioning, and he will call them out. And so again, President Trump is being a leader. He's going to call out those who have different agendas other than focusing on American lives, and for that matter, lives from around the world. So I believe he has done very, very well, which is also not only my opinion, but also the opinion of many Americans from around the nation, because his polls have continued to increase with more popularity than before this pandemic. So I think people in general support what he's been doing. I believe that the American people are very optimistic that they have the right person in the White House that's leading us as a nation and as a people through this pandemic, because it's two things. President Trump is focused on saving American lives, at the same time making sure that our economy continues to evolve and at some point in time will grow, because I think that's who we are as a free people in a free nation. We like to go out and produce and serve and help other people, and that's just who we are. It's not about the bigger governments, it's about we the people, and President Trump is looking forward to shortening of the curve, if you would, but not flattening the economy. And I think he's doing both, and I applaud his effort, and he will continue to listen to the leaders and to the professionals within the health industry and all as well as military and alike, to focus on making the right decisions for the American people. And I believe that he's done a great job, and he will continue to doing that through this process.
The evaluation will be in the coming months, in November,
Yes.
Mr. Rob Arlett. Of course, we wish all the best for the Americans, and we pray for them because there is a lot of confirmed cases. Thank you very much, Rob Arlett
Thank you.
from Delaware.
Thank
And we thank Emil Amin from Cairo.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Arlett. We are done. See you soon.
All right, that was fun. Thank you.
Welcome, sir. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.